Hello everybody, we're going to hit you up with another presidential election. This one, the election of 1988. Two new candidates going at it to see who will succeed Ronald Reagan as president. Who's going to get it done? Let's find that out right now. Now we're going to start off with the incumbent party, and that's the Republican Party. Ronald Reagan has already reached his two-term limit, so he cannot serve anymore. So the Republican nomination wide open. And the nomination comes down to the Vice President, George Herbert Walker Bush of Texas, Senator Bob Dole of Kansas, Pat Robertson of Virginia, Jack Kemp, Congressman from New York, Pierre S. DuPont IV of Delaware, Alexander Haig of Pennsylvania, Ben Fernandez of California, Paul Exalt of Nevada, Donald Rumsfeld of Illinois, Harold Stassen of Minnesota, and Isabel Masters of Kansas. At the end of the day, it is going to be Vice President Bush who receives the presidential nomination for the Republican Party, and he's going to select Dan Quayle, senator from Indiana, as his running mate. Now that we have the Republican ticket of Bush and Quayle, let's head on to the Democrats. Now, the Democratic nomination just as wide open as the Republican one is. The candidates putting themselves up for nomination were the governor of Massachusetts, Michael Dukakis, South Carolina's Jesse Jackson, Senator Al Gore of Tennessee, Congressman Dick Gephardt of Missouri, Senator Paul Simon of Illinois, Gary Hart of Colorado, Bruce Babbitt of Arizona, Senator Joe Biden of Delaware, Lyndon LaRoche of Virginia, David Duke of Louisiana, two Ohio congressmen, James Traficant and Douglas Applegate, and Andy Martin of Connecticut. At the end of the day, it is going to be Dukakis who receives the Democratic nomination for president, and he's going to select Lloyd Bentsen, Senator Lloyd Bentsen of Texas, as his running mate. Now that we have our Republican ticket of Bush and Quayle and our Democratic ticket of Dukakis and Bentsen, let's put these guys into the ring and let's see who's going to win this thing. Now, during this election, the Bush campaign sought to portray Governor Dukakis as a Massachusetts liberal who is unreasonably left-wing. Dukakis was attacked for such positions such as opposing mandatory recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance in schools and being a, quote, card-carrying member of the ACLU, or the American Civil Liberties Union. Dukakis responded by saying that he was a proud liberal and that the phrase should not be a bad word in America. Bush derided Dukakis for having foreign policy views born in Harvard Yard's boutique. New York Times columnist Maureen Dowd asked, "Wasn't this a case of the pot calling the kettle elite?" Bush explained that unlike Harvard, Yale's reputation was so diffuse there isn't a symbol, I don't think, in the Yale situation, any symbolism in it. Harvard boutique to me has the connotation of liberalism and elitism, and said Harvard in his remark was intended to represent a philosophical enclave and not a statement about class. Columnist Russell Baker opined that voters inclined to loathe and fear elite Ivy League schools rarely make fine distinctions between Yale and Harvard. All they know is that both are full of rich, fancy, stuck-up, and possibly dangerous intellectuals who never sit down to supper in their undershirt no matter how hot the weather gets. Now, the Dukakis camp tried to tie Bush to some of the recent scandals of the Reagan administration, such as the Iran-Contra affair, approaching that he had almost the same degree of power as Reagan. Now, the Iran-Contra affair was a scandal during Reagan's second term that was alleged that the United States made illegal arms sales to Iran to fund the Contra rebels in Nicaragua in their fight against the Sandinistas. Turned out that Reagan himself did not have any involvement in this affair, and people were arrested for their role in the affair, people such as Oliver North. But Bush did become pretty powerful. He even acted as president a couple of times while Reagan was going through some medical procedures. Now, Governor Dukakis attempted to quell criticism that he was ignorant on military matters by staging a photo op in which he rode in an M1 Abrams tank outside a General Dynamics plant in Sterling Heights, Michigan. Now, this move ended up being a massive public relations blunder, with many mocking Dukakis' appearance as he stuck his smiling, helmeted head out of one of the tank's hatches to wave to the crowd. Footage of Dukakis was used by the Bush campaign as evidence that he would not make a good commander-in-chief, and Dukakis in the tank, or the Snoopy incident, remains shorthand for backfired public relations outings. Now, one reason for Bush's choice of a running mate, Dan Quayle, Senator Quayle, was to appeal to a younger generation of Americans identified with the Reagan Revolution. Quayle's good looks were praised by Senator John McCain. He said, "I can't believe a guy that handsome wouldn't have some impact." Quayle was not a seasoned politician, however, and made a number of embarrassing statements. The Dukakis team attacked Quayle's credentials, saying he was dangerously inexperienced to be first in line to the presidency. Now, during the vice presidential debate, Quayle attempted to dispel such allegations by comparing his experience with that of former Senator John F. Kennedy, who had also been a young political rookie when running for the presidency. Quayle said, quote, "I have as much experience in the Congress as Jack Kennedy did when he sought the presidency." The caucus's running mate Lloyd Bentsen responded, "Senator, I served with Jack Kennedy. I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy." Now, Quayle responded, "That was really uncalled for, Senator," to which Benson said, "You're the one that was making the comparison, Senator, and I'm one who knew him well. And frankly, I think you are so far apart in the objectives you chose for your country that I did not think the comparison was well taken." Now, Quayle's reaction to Benson's comment was played and replayed by the Democrats in subsequent television ads as an announcer intoned Quayle just a heartbeat away. Despite much press about the Kennedy comments, this did not reduce the Bush-Quayle lead in the polls. Quayle had sought to use the debate to criticize the caucus as too liberal, rather than go point for point with the more seasoned Benson. Benson's attempts to defend the caucus received little recognition, with greater attention on the Kennedy comparison. Now, during the course of the campaign, the caucus fired his deputy field director, Donna Brazile, after she spread rumors that Bush had an affair with his assistant, Jennifer Fitzgerald. Now, this relationship between Bush and Fitzgerald will be briefly rehashed during the 1992 campaign, which we'll talk about next time. Now, the caucus was badly hurt by the Republican Willie Horton revolving door and Boston Harbor campaign ads, the latter of which attacked the governor's failure to clean up environmental pollution in the harbor. The caucus was a supporter of a state prison furlough program, which had begun before he was governor. The program had resulted in the release of convicted murderer Willie Horton, who then committed a rape and assault in Maryland. As governor, the caucus had vetoed a 1976 plan to bar inmates convicted of first-degree murder from the furlough program. The program was abolished by the state legislature in April 1988 after public outcry over the Willie Horton case. Now, a number of false rumors about the caucus were reported in the media, including the claim by Idaho Republican Senator Steve Sims that the caucus's wife Kitty had burned an American flag to protest the Vietnam War, as well as the claim that the caucus himself had been treated for mental illness. Lee Atwater was accused of having floated these rumors. Now, although the caucus did well in the first presidential debate, Bush seemed to score a triumph in the second debate, with a Gallup poll giving him a 49-43 lead. Before the second debate, the caucus had been suffering from the flu and spent much of the day in bed. His performance was poor and played to his reputation as being intellectually cold. The most memorable moment came when reporter Bernard Shaw asked the caucus whether he would support the death penalty if his wife were raped and murdered. The caucus's answer discussed the statistical ineffectiveness of capital punishment. Several commentators thought the question itself was unfair and that it injected an irrelevant emotional element into the discussion of a policy issue. But many observers felt the caucus's answer lacked the normal emotions one would expect of a person asked about a loved one's rape and death. Tom Brokaw of NBC reported on his October 14th newscast, quote, "The consensus tonight is that Vice President George Bush won last night's debate and made it all the harder for Governor Michael Dukakis to catch and pass him in the 25 days remaining. In all the Friday morning quarterbacking, there was common agreement that Dukakis failed to seize the debate and make it his night. And now with the campaign over with, let's go on ahead to the results and see who's going to win this thing. Now, this is going to be a third straight landslide victory for the Republican Party. 426 electoral votes are going to go for Mr. Bush and the Republicans, while the caucus and the Democrats received 111. In terms of the states, 40 states are going to vote Republican and vote for Bush. 10 states, along with the District of Columbia, are going to vote Democratic and vote for the caucus. And the Democrats do make pretty significant gains. From 1984, along with keeping Minnesota and D.C., they gained Massachusetts, they gained New York, they gained West Virginia, Wisconsin, Iowa, Hawaii, Washington, and Oregon. In terms of the popular vote, 53.4% is going to vote for Bush and the Republicans, while 45.6% are going to vote for the caucus and the Democrats. Now, with that in mind, Bush is going to serve out his first term as president. He is going to succeed Ronald Reagan, and he is going to go for a second term in 1992, which we'll talk about next time. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't seen any of my previous videos, go ahead and watch those if you want, and we will see you next time with the election of 1992.